Welcome to Inside ELAS, the prequel. In this episode, we talk about the history of ASReview. Why did you start developing AI-assisted screening software? What were the highs, the hurdles, and everything in between? I'm your host, Josien Boekje, and with me are ASReview founders Rens van der Schoot and Jonathan de Bruin. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And maybe did ASReview also start in the morning?
Ooh, I can't remember.
What was the spark, the first spark of ELAS?
I was actually working on a systematic review myself, so I was screening thousands of abstracts. And on an afternoon, I can remember that Daniel Oberski walked into my office, and I asked him, like, Daniel, come on, I'm screening all these abstracts. Can you not develop something to replace myself by a machine? And then we took an exam of a student, and on the backside of that exam, we actually started drawing the first infrastructure, the first pipeline of ASReview. So that was actually the start.
On the back of a napkin, but then on the back of an exam.
So I don't think that this student realized that actually exams was the start of this huge project.
So the student could have walked away with your idea. Maybe.
Ooh.
But it's open source anyway,
It's open
so it
source
doesn't
anyway.
matter. So how did you meet Jonathan?
Yeah, so after this first idea that Daniel and I put on paper, there was an option at the ITS department for some small funding for high-risk prototype development. So we applied for this small funding, and then that's when Jonathan came in. So he's working on the ITS department, and someone told me, like, hey, you should look for this huge, tall guy. So I was walking on the university campus, and suddenly I saw him walking around, and I thought, okay, this must be Jonathan. I still remember it was a sunny day, and so I actually asked him, like, are you Jonathan? And then he said yes.
You're making up the story a bit, but
no, that's not true.
Yeah, but it's almost like this. So then we got in contact, and the project was actually very nice. And I've been working on many projects, but this one was a project with a huge potential. So I really loved the idea, and so I got back to my department, and then a colleague said, no, but I really want to do this project. So,
so it's competition.
Yeah, so
and this was Parisa Zahidi, right?
First Case. Case was
Case.
actually one of my former colleagues, and he is retired now, and he really wanted to do one cool project before he retired, and he wanted to start with ASReview. So for me, it was a really nice experience because I started to help him in his first steps in the project, and it was super interesting to see. And yeah, later on, we got new colleagues, and everyone started actually in the ASReview project. I was not doing so much work myself in the project. And from that moment on, it started developing the project. And at a certain moment,
and what were the first baby steps of not yet ELAS, but ASReview? What was the name at that moment, actually, of the project?
Yeah, the project didn't have a name in the beginning, so technically
people were so enthusiastic. So I'm very curious. What made people so enthusiastic about this cool project?
I think because Rens was all the time positioning it as Tinder for systematic reviews. I think, what he was saying all the time.
Yes.
So
yeah, and I can still remember that I was working on a newspaper article of the financial magazine, and we actually made it up to the front cover of the financial magazine. But Jonathan was so pissed off me because we just had a simulation study. I think it was not even ready, and we actually already promised that it worked. So I'm sorry, Jonathan.
Yeah, you invited the journalist, and the journalist was coming, and it was like, yeah, now I want to see it. Yeah, and it was like, yeah, okay, but I made something yesterday evening. What am I going to say?
But there was great potential, everyone understood
so what
that it was
did you show in the end?
I think I made something that evening that was no longer a simulation study, but a piece of software.
And what would it look like on your screen? Like now we have fancy dashboards with nice colors and stuff.
It was basically a little user interface that didn't work. That was
it didn't work.
You could just click on things, but it didn't work. But it was just.
But the journalist didn't realize, so it didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
It was not a scientist with actually 10,000 of papers to screen.
No, but that was like 7 years ago. So it's a long time
and
ago.
when was the first moment that researchers could actually use it to screen their literature?
Yeah, I think that's like a bit of a gradient. I think we're still developing this, so the impact gets bigger and bigger over time. So there's not one moment where you say, okay, now it's there, now it's useful. I think we're always trying to make it more useful. So I think there are researchers from the very, very beginning who thought it was useful.
Yeah. So who was the first researcher using it for an actual review?
I think that was the team of Lars Stummers. Remember that we invited his team with Rosanne and some other colleagues actually to come here to the university to actually use it in our presence. So we actually learned so many.
You had to assist them through all the, because was that in the command line, or how did it operate, the first versions of this?
I can't remember. This is so long ago. I think it's first you had to start the command line interface, and you were interacting, typing like the old-fashioned 80s way of using a computer.
Yeah.
And I think just before the COVID crisis, we released a user-friendly front end, because during the COVID crisis, that's actually where the project accelerated to what we are now. Because during the COVID-19 crisis, we suddenly realized that screening papers is time sensitive. So normally people would screen papers forever. I mean, you've done a systematic review yourself. Come on, you can take forever. We're scientists, there's no hurry. But during the COVID crisis,
no hurry.
Of course. But during the COVID crisis, everyone realized that systematically screening the literature is important.
Yeah, it's very important, and it takes so much time. So I'm not the type of scientist who likes to screen. It's the most boring part.
But you did screen a lot of papers.
Yeah, I had to screen
so
like
19,000
papers. Well, deduplicated was like around 12,000. I was like, oh my God, I don't want to screen all of these, because my search string was so inclusive. I'm a very inclusive person. So I actually also wanted to include all languages. But at that point of time, my supervisor didn't agree, because they didn't understand Spanish. I was like, yeah, whatever. I know quite a lot of languages. We can translate it. So what's the problem with that? So my next review, I will also include all the languages. But I wanted to be really inclusive. But I was like, I'm not going to screen 12,000 papers, because I also have to ask my colleague. I mean, I can sacrifice myself, but we have to do with two people. And my colleague, Bo, okay, she likes my topic, but it's not her passion or anything. And then you're not finished yet. I mean, it's just a screening part. Then the actual work starts. Well, sorry, in my opinion. So I wanted to be quicker, but then I also was so afraid of this grumpy reviewers who might say, well, this method you used, you haven't seen all the records. Can we trust this? And also my supervisors were not totally convinced. It's like, okay, it's at your own risk. If you want to use this software, well, yeah, it's your risk. So I didn't want to really risk anything, but I did want to save time. And it did allow me to have a more sensitive search.
Yeah, that's what. So that's what we often see. So either people choose for saving time, so screening fewer papers than the 12,000 in your data set.
So for efficiency reasons.
For efficiency reasons. Yeah. So with a data, so every time when we refer to a data set, we actually refer to a set or collection of texts that have to be screened. And those texts can be titles and abstracts of scientific papers. It can be newspaper articles. Doesn't really matter. So there's an enormous amount of textual data, and you're only interested to identify a few relevant ones. You have to be very inclusive in that sense. So missing a relevant paper, well, maybe missing one is not so important, but you don't want to miss too many, right? So that's the task at hand.
Because that would influence your conclusions of your research. And if those conclusions are during COVID, for example, national guidelines on how to wash your hands.
Exactly, and you don't want to miss. Yeah, and you don't want to miss that one paper describing specific side effects.
Yeah, for example.
Right?
Yeah.
So either people use our software to for time efficiency, or they decide to use it for quality control. So they actually import bigger data sets.
Yeah.
So instead of 12,000, we see people uploading, 250,000 records or even 1 million records. Because out of those records, you have to screen just a few. So that's how people use it, either time efficiency or bigger data sets and spending an equal amount of time screening.
Yeah, and if you see the amount of downloads at the moment, do we have an idea of how many people are actually using this software? Yeah. And how did that develop over time?
Yeah, this is always a very interesting question. It's a very complicated one, and that brings us to.
I thought you would just respond with a number, but
No,
this
yeah,
is complicated. Yes.
no, yeah,
Tell me.
it's very complicated. Open source software is everywhere out and about, so there's no like single source of truth. It's like distributed. It's free to share, so we don't know actually.
Do you know if there are any new versions? When it's open source, have people actually made their own version somewhere in the world?
But we see integrations. So they're like bigger platforms, and we see integrations of ASReview inside of those platforms. Some are commercial, some are open source. So that's very interesting. We see some ministries who have integrated it, both in the Netherlands but also in the United States. So there is indeed integration. There is like individual downloads and there's distribution, but we don't know actually
And
to
but
what
the
extent.
number of downloads? We can
I
see
think
that,
the
right?
number of downloads is like the poorest estimator of the impact of an open source project, but I think at the moment we're easily above 500,000.
I think
So-
the latest number was 700,050 or something. I don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah, so that's that's
It's being
a
used.
nice
Yes.
number. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to realize, Eugene, so it's the installations of ASReview. So I don't know how many times Jonathan himself installed ASReview to test
Of
something,
course,
but
yeah.
with one installation, and an entire company or institute can use it. So
Yeah.
one install at the university facilitates all the scientists at that university. So it's really weird. But there's a better way of seeing whether you actually have users, is if whenever you upload a new release, we just start waiting how long it takes before the first issue is reported. So recently we released version 2.0, and I think the first issue was reported within
Half an hour later.
Oh, great.
So that's a good indicator.
And we didn't even make a lot of PR for the new release.
Yeah.
So it was silently released. So I think we're
And it was a very small issue, so
Yeah.
there is no big issues
Nope.
found so far. So that's the most
Yeah.
important thing.
But Jonathan, this is really something to celebrate, right? I mean, we're always releasing new versions. We're not a software company, right? We're a university, and we started out with this small research project. It was a simulation, then we had some user interface. It was all fun, but now we're actually running the software within the university. So the fact that we released version 2.0 and that there are no big issues, I mean, people are completely dependent on our software in their pipelines.
Yeah.
So that's something to celebrate, Jonathan.
Yeah, indeed, and maybe to empathize is that we're working with a team of very young, sometimes relatively unexperienced people when it comes to the software development. So we are not a software development company within this university. So we are not hiring expert developers. And yeah, therefore we are using the potential of our young, sometimes students, sometimes junior researchers, to help us developing the software.
Yeah.
And they are learning on the job, and they are doing an excellent job, I think.
Yeah. And that's also related to the project being open source. You once said everything we do is open, always. Well, do you still agree with that at this moment?
Yes, so I think everything you do within a university should be open.
Yeah.
It's simple as that. I can't imagine that someone is writing code and keeping it for themselves. It's a crazy idea, and I hope that no one is doing it. The same holds for open access publication.
Yeah.
So come on, this is 2025. We're working open at the university, so
Yeah.
that's how I work, and that doesn't make it also easy to work open. It is sometimes challenging.
And what are one of the biggest challenges? you've
No,
encountered?
you can sometimes be scared when you want to publish something. All your mistakes are also out and about and open to the internet, and everyone can read with you. So you should also develop a mindset where you just think like, okay, I'm working open,
Yeah.
and I'm.
Does it
very-
actually push you to your limits to make even better quality code because everyone can see it?
I think nowadays the open source ecosystem is much more friendly than it was a couple of years ago. When I started with my master thesis, I published my master thesis online. I pushed it to GitHub, and then I had sometimes really angry reactions from people, like people in India reaching out to me and just yelling at me via the email.
Like
I
it
think
being
that
Twitter or
has,
but
yeah,
then
yeah.
GitHub.
They were
What
super
happens?
aggressive to me, like it doesn't work and blah, 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 blah. And nowadays, I think people are reaching out to you like, oh, it doesn't work. Can I help you? And even people without very technical knowledge are proposing technical solutions to us. So I think the time is there, and it's an amazing place to be.
But how does it work with continuing such a project? I mean, there's no financial support. Well, or is there?
Yeah, it's recently funded. So we have a lot of research grants to for example, test whether there are better AI models, and we do all kinds of AI comparisons, and then we can implement the newest AI model into the software. Or we get grants more on, I don't know, UX improvements. And then we do little tests. So everything is actually
depends on which grant
driven.
you get,
Exactly.
and then you can improve part of the.
But the biggest investment is the time of people. We have an enormous community from all over the world, actually, who are donating their time to invest in this project because it will benefit them. I mean, look at you, because you also invested a lot of time in improving the software.
Yeah.
Not maybe directly with improving the code, but by thinking about the pipeline, by replying on a discussion platform. So we do it together. So this is truly a community-driven project.
You're talking about AI models. Yeah, AI is such a big buzzword nowadays. What does it mean in the case of ASReview?
Yeah, so ASReview uses what we call active learning, or human-in-the-loop active learning. So we have an AI model, just a machine learning model making predictions. And based on the human who is labeling the text and providing labels, the prediction model actually can improve its predictions. But before we can do that, we first have to translate the text into something that the machine can use. And this is what we call, Jonathan, take over, because you are more the expert here.
Yeah, so we're extracting features from our data, and this data, those features are.
What is a feature, for example? Let's talk titles and abstracts.
Yeah, I hope that that Jelle and Peter will explain this in all the detail. But the text cannot be used in an AI model directly. So usually they are first translating it to a sequence of numbers, and you can do this in various ways. The smarter, the better, I would say. And then those sequence of numbers is, of course, way easier for a computer to manage. Computers think in numbers, and if you have a sequence of numbers, you can start training with those numbers. And then it becomes more like the machine learning part or the statistical part that becomes relevant there.
And how is it different from like LLMs? Because, for example, many people talk about LLMs consuming a lot of energy. How does it work with these kind of models? Where do they run, and does it cost a lot of energy?
Oh, that's a good question. We always try to run our models on the side of the user, so that makes it also.
So on your own computer, actually.
Yeah, on your own computer. We are an open source project, so we want to give the user complete control over the model, and not only
the data, right?
Yeah, and the data. So not only in terms of the user interface and the experience. We also want to give our users the technical autonomy over their hardware. So that's important because in nowadays AI, this is no longer the case. You don't know where things are executed.
So you don't need an enormous data center at your home to run this software.
No, that's the interesting thing. If we could, our models might be even better, but we can't. So we try to use very efficient, lightweight models in a very smart way. So we're making an AI that is like very efficient, technically speaking,
and
it's
also very
energy speaking.
Purposed, right? It has a clear purpose. It doesn't have to do all the things in the world like these big LLMs. It has a single purpose, screening text.
That always helps. Yeah. And nowadays they want LLMs to become like AGI, like the artificial general intelligence. But that's something I think we are far from there. But it will consume also like crazy amount of resources, and it's
often,
not always.
Oftentimes you don't even need it. I mean, I automate certain steps of my research with AI. And I'm very happy with ASReview being able to help me with screening and actually now also extracting data already. But I don't need an AGI because some things I just like to do myself. and I just need specific features.
I
So
think there are
it can be
some,
more efficient. Yeah.
tech entrepreneurs who completely disagree with you, and I'm mentioning the Sam Altman of OpenAI, who will completely disagree with you. But we think that it's better to develop AI for specific tasks than try to make one big AI that is taking everything over. And what you see with the LLMs, they're especially good at automating like very business-related tasks like marketing, service desks. They're super good in automating those things, LLMs. But yeah, I think you're not replacing a human researcher at the moment with an LLM.
So what would be now the difference between an LLM and this active learning you're talking about?
So the main difference is who makes the labeling decision.
Okay.
So we strongly believe that it should be the human expert who is making the labeling decision, serving as an oracle.
Yeah.
So it's your responsibility. We just provide you with the most likely relevant record. Hey, based on your previous labeling decisions, this might be a relevant record for you. Josine, what do you think? And then it's your decision.
Yeah.
Whereas, so we've also run a lot of LLM comparisons in our AI lab, where we actually just send the entire data set with titles and abstracts and the inclusion criterion to an LLM. It was done in 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, if you use enough compute credits, of course. So it was done in 4 minutes. But will you trust the labels? And even if the labels are correct, which is often not the case because it can make mistakes just like a human, what would you value more? A human making the labeling decisions and maybe making a mistake, or an LLM, a black box, making the labeling decisions and also maybe making a mistake?
So maybe that's the biggest difference, right? It's more like a black box in terms of decisions made by the model instead of made by a researcher.
And if our system is so good, then we only present you with relevant abstracts. So why would you then need an LLM? But because
of which I still need to read the full text anyway.
You will still need to read the full text anyway, unless you really want to give an LLM the entire pipeline, so that you just ask a research question to an LLM, and then the LLM writes a paper for you. Well, that's also fine, but then you should not use ASReview, right?
Because I thought I might, for my next review, do a hybrid version, like I do my screening with ASReview, and I'll let an LLM also do the screening, and then calculate iterator reliability with the LLM. Yeah, but I don't know, does that make sense, or is it totally stupid?
Yeah, so that's what we did in the Foras project. And so we actually computed the iterator reliability, and the LLM suggested a relevant paper, which we did not find as humans. Simply because, I don't know, we overlooked that paper or our inclusion criteria.
So it's more like an extra quality check, actually.
It's like an extra quality check. So you can either use an LLM upfront to translate text into vectors. That can an LLM can also do that. Or you can use it at the end like a quality control. Like, hey, dear LLM, did I overlook any of those papers? You can also use a second human to do that screening, right?
Yeah, or you could let the LLM add labels to all your unseen records. Just to check if there are, and then all the ones that the LLM includes, you can screen them to see if there's anything relevant. Yeah. That's nice, but that's about the future.
That's about the future.
Yeah. It's always about the future.
It's always about the future. So,
don't
sure.
worry.
But the episode was called finished. The History of ASReview, right? So this is the future of ASReview. Then what?
Yeah. Wow. History. The future is a mystery.
Yeah, but maybe that's the beauty of this project, that every time we are thinking about the next step, everyone is like spitting their ideas, and there's so many ideas, and we have to carefully pick the ones we want to work on. But the cool thing is that the community is also having a lot of those ideas, so we don't have to do this all ourselves. It's also like the tools are out there. And feel free to use them and publish about it because we are super interested in your results.
That brings us to the end of this episode of Inside ELAS, the prequel. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your fellow researchers, supervisors, or that one colleague who still screens everything manually. We see you. For more stories, updates, and insights, follow us and stay tuned. ELAS can't wait to expand its community, making its little digital heart positively pulsing in binary with joy.